Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast. This is a show dedicated to the pursuit of health and wealth without losing your health to attain that wealth. With this podcast, we're going to share stories and best practices of successful business owners who either sell health or have health as part of their business plan. You're going to get great marketing and strategic advice from proven, successful experts. We will also be sharing stories from successful entrepreneurs who lost their health on the road to wealth, what they learned, and how they do things differently now, both in business and in life. Let's welcome your host, businesswoman, personal trainer, and podcast queen, JJ Flazanes.
Welcome, everyone, to today's show. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host and producer. Thank you for downloading today's episode. Today, we're going to talk about chakra assessments for your business and money. We're also going to talk about energy healing for trauma as well in today's show. But before we get started and I tell you about Cyndi Dale, I want to remind you, happy September. Today is September 1st, if you're getting the show on the day that it releases. And today is the first day of our last free manifestation challenge. We do these twice a year in this group, and you can go to jjflazanes.com/30day. That's 30DAY for a free 30-day manifestation challenge. And you can focus on anything you'd like to in that challenge. My only request is when you sign up, you have to go through a series of questions on Facebook before you get in, and I need to have you in my system to verify. I'd prefer, of course, that you listen to the show and that you're someone who does regularly listen to the show. Please do not invite anyone else who doesn't know me or this show, because it's not as impactful as someone who's been listening for a while and understands more about the law of attraction and some of the tools that I may be offering. So again, if you want to join, it's the last free 30-day manifestation challenge, jjflazanes.com/30day, 30DAY, and the link will also be in the show notes. Today's guest is Cyndi Dale. She's an internationally renowned author, speaker, healer, and business consultant, and the author of 27 books about energy medicine, intuition, and spirituality. In addition, she has worked with over 70,000 clients and presented hundreds of seminars and workshops across America and in Russia, England, Wales, Amsterdam, Iceland, Costa Rica, Belize, Morocco, Peru, Scotland, and more. She is also a favored teacher and healer for China, leading in-person and online classes, and has been published in over 17 languages. Welcome to the show, Cyndi.
I am so happy to be here. Thanks, JJ.
I love what you do, and I love all of the things that we've talked about prior to having this interview, like a chakra assessment for your business and looking at your chakra assessment for your business plan. You're right up my alley in this combination of wealth and health and wealth. And, you know, I just moved into the money game myself at the end of last year because I was mind, body, soul, but I'm like, okay, it needs to be mind, body, soul, money. But I was like waiting for that to come into play. And because a lot of people, when they hear energy healer or spiritual, they just like sort of go, like, how do I use that? What does that mean? What are you going to help me with that's going to be tangible in my everyday life? So I think where I want to start with you today is a little bit about your backstory and your own gifts and when you knew you had them and how you developed them. And then maybe along the way, I find for a lot of people, especially who listen to Health and Wealth, we have to learn the lesson of what it means to be out of integrity with who we really are. And when we're not in alignment, what negative things we attract because we're not being honest. We don't have the courage yet to step into because we're afraid of criticism or we're afraid of rejection. And so I really want to unpack your story about your own journey and how you've moved through and when you knew it was time.
Well, I'd love to share it. And I do want to give a big shout out to money because, you know, it's sort of the ultimate energy. So that we're heading there is fantastic. I need it. You need it. We all need it. It's sort of in short supply in a lot of households right now. So I'm glad that we're aiming there also. I was an odd child. I grew up in a white, Wonder Bread, Lutheran, Norwegian family, and I was the one who saw colors. I saw spirits. I talked to ghosts. My hands would heat up when somebody was ill. And my family was such, because we were Norwegian, we didn't really say something was bad. We just didn't talk about it. So nobody talked about who I was or what I was all about, except to tell me, stop making things up. And I did stop making things up, just not really on purpose. It's more that I had a near-death experience when I was about 12, 13. I sort of drove myself into it. I said to my parents, I don't want to be here anymore. This is not a cool place. I'm not having any fun. And I got sick. And about 2-3 days later, I literally lifted out of my body. I floated around. I wanted to leave. And 3 times a voice told me, you have to go back. And 3 times I said no. Well, finally the voice just said, you haven't done anything. And there I was, sort of a failed near-death experience spiritual person. I landed back in my body and I decided I wasn't going to use my gifts again. So then I was sort of like a muggle, JJ, and it wasn't very fun. There was no depth or texture to the tapestry. I was fortunate that I went to therapy as a client when I was only 19 or 20. And in the course of unpacking, talk about unpacking, codependency, obsessive compulsive, bulimia, whatever all of it was at that time, I had a therapist say, you're not only this and that and the other thing, but you're also psychic. And that was sort of the portal. That was my front or maybe back door into asking the questions that led me to traveling around the world, studying with healers, studying with shamans while I was working in business for a good 10 years. So I know what it's like to bridge that gap between the inner and what the outer looks like. And I eventually ended up in the business I am, which is an energy healing, energy management, intuitive business. Every few years, the name of what I do changes. Right now it's called energy medicine or energy healing. Back then it was psychic healing, but it's all the same thing. It's about working with the invisible, which is actually 99.999% of reality. Even a scientist will tell you that what, kind of comprises an object is not really physical. 99.999% plus of it is space, which is really what I call subtle energy. It's the invisible stuff. So that's what I specialize in. But what good is it to work with subtle energy unless you're impacting everyday reality, right? Like your work, your jobs, your love, your relationships, your house, your dynamics.
First, I think it's amazing that a therapist told you were psychic. I think I'm blown away by that. 2, my name of my company is called Invisible Fitness. So
that's cool.
I've been saying for about, since 2004. So we're at 16 years. For 16 years, I've been saying it's the invisible that creates the visible. And that was before I even really understood quantum physics. It was literally just the joints and the bones and thinking about all the sciences applied to the physical body. But it was a perfect brand for me because I grew into understanding all of the physical and non-physical sciences, or I should say energetic sciences that create everything, right? Like quantum physics. So I love that. I'm right with you there. So at what point you have this therapist, she tells you that you're psychic, you kind of claim that, for me, it was a big awakening once when I had a therapist tell me I was gifted. It answered a lot of questions. I didn't like it at first. It felt like a burden. It felt like it was another reason for people to disconnect with me and separate from me. But I learned to grow into it, to accept it, to celebrate it. And so I know for me that it was like one of those double-edged swords. Like at first it was like, oh, and then we're like, oh, and then I had to kind of work into, okay, I accept this. So now you're taking this, it's a confirmation or validation. You're now moving into the world. And what are you doing with it?
Well, I was like you. I first thought, what? And I don't think I'm going to have any friends after this. So I really was fortunate in that the man I was seeing traveled a lot, and I accompanied him on a lot of the travels to Venezuela, to Japan, to a lot of different foreign sites. And once there, I was able to separate myself out and go work with different shamans or healers. I was questing. I was thirsty. I was wanting to know what this was. And there wasn't a lot of answers in America for me at that time. I think I didn't take a class till I was 28. And that was what was then called the therapeutic touch class, which is like healing touch, which talks about chakras. And that was a huge eye opener for me because I'd always seen these balls of color around people. And the word chakra was not in the Norwegian Lutheran dictionary. Okay. And now I'm learning that these are real, that these are valid, and I'm seeing more of them than other people do. So that kind of became my pedestal or my spinoff. The first book I wrote was how I saw 12 chakras, not just 7 in the body. And again, I had this voice. I know some people with voices are put inpatient. I was able to stay outpatient and keep going to therapy. But this was a good voice. This voice was very instructional. For instance, at one point it said to me, you need to start doing readings. You need to start doing healings. And I was really nervous. So what I did was I went and made the cards at what was then Kinko's. They were pink with a pretty rose flower on them. And I collected them thinking, I'm just going to bury these. I am so not going to pass out these psychic healer cards. So I'm picking them up. I'm, kind of abashed. I'm, almost closing my eyes like kids do. Like if I close my eyes, nobody can see me. And I'm buying them. This woman next to me says, oh, do you do psychic work? And I go, well, yeah. And she goes, I'm an esthetician. I do hair. Honey, I have a ton of clients. I'll send you people. And I was forced into business. So then I was told to teach a class. Then I was told, write your book about the 12 chakras. And I've really fortunately been led each step of the way with the big moves. The small moves, I'm sure you find this, JJ, also. Some of the small moves, you've got to follow your own intuition, but I think intuition only tells you so much. Like it's going to tell you what you need to know on an as need to know basis. Like it's not going to say, marry this guy and then you're going to divorce because you need the child, which I did go through. But the voice didn't say, marry this guy and then you're going to divorce. It said, marry this guy. And then later it was like, oh, by the way, this is not happy ever after. So, but you have the child. So we float down the river and sometimes we're paddling too.
Well, I think that goes to illustrate sort of our sacred contracts, what we incarnate, like the reason and all of the contracts we have along the way, because the same thing happened with me. I was in complete alignment when I met my husband, my ex-husband, and I checked in with that. I checked in with, I am the happiest I've ever been. As I was meeting him, I wasn't trying to fill a void. I wasn't trying to save face. I wasn't afraid of the future. I wasn't trying to secure a husband. None of that was going on for me. And it's so during the harder times in the marriage, I took those lessons to heart and I thought, well, this is the school of life. This is the school of relationships. And this is what happens. And you learn about yourself because now you have an opportunity for a mirror. And as I went through, I, got to the point where it was now this is time to let go and release and allow and surrender. And with even still a little bit of hope for the future. And of course, the universe delivered me exactly what I had been asking for in a different person. So I also knew that it was about divine timing. And I listened to my intuition for when I was ready to come from a centered place full of compassion and love, not only for him, but for myself. And I agree with you. Intuition does help us in that red hot moment. And it's so powerful though, because we still have these lessons to learn. And when we tell our stories, like you're telling yours and how I often tell mine, sometimes people can start to see the shape of their hero's journey, if you will, in their story, and how that these things, this contrast, I teach law of attraction, this contrast is necessary to shape clarity of what the next thing is for you. So it's in perfect energetic alignment that, of course, you're just trusting and following your guidance, and you're following this voice, and you're following the impulse, and you're manifesting opportunity to work with somebody who, when you first decided, I'm afraid and I don't want to do this. And then someone says, do you do this? And a shout out, by the way, to all of you hairdressers. I have many of you as clients, and in the inner circle, Karen and T. And I appreciate all of you because you're all the connectors, right? You get that person in the chair and they're like sending people to everybody. So shout out to the hairdressers and Julie, of course. So now you're working with people one-on-one, you're dealing with chakras, you're probably moving into different kinds of healing modalities. At what point did you decide to take this to a business and make it like a business of energy business, not meaning, I mean, you have a business, you forced into business because she gave you clients, but I know a lot of healers that stay there. They just work one-on-one with people. They just deal with the emotional and the energetic piece. But you've branched off into now like doing a chakra assessment for your business and a business plan. So when did you move into that?
Well, I have a background through my 20s actually in business. I worked in public relations, public affairs, nonprofit management, fundraising. So I was always interested in it. And of course, most of my clients work in business. They're small business owners. They work in corporate. They're here, there, the other thing. Business sort of makes the world go round. If you look at it, I'm in business, just like you said. And so somewhere in about 10 years after my first book came out, that was originally titled New Chakra Healing. Now it's reissued as a different book. I thought, I work with business people all day, every day. And why can't we work with businesses the same way we would work with a person? Because a business is, of course, legally and formally called an entity. So it's a person, anybody or anything with a soul is an entity. And I started to work with clients and ask them, hey, do you want me to check the health of your business? Because your business has a 10th chakra, that's the grounded one that's about history. They have a first chakra, that's the one that's about their money flow and profit management. They have an emotional center that really is sort of the read on how everybody's feeling about themselves and their business. What emotions do they bring to work? Which ones do they take home? So everything that a person is about is exactly what a business is about. And I used to teach business ethics actually at the University of Minnesota. So that was also a great platform, kind of a foundation for then saying, let's look at how the chakras of a business work, and can we allow those to be aligned? Because if you're really aligned, if you're on point, you're also going to be an ethical business. You're going to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. When you go too far out of the bounds, when you start cutting corners or negating people or ignoring profit margin, which you can't do either, then all of a sudden you're blurring your own ethics as well.
So I'm having these thoughts about some of my mastermind members and their businesses. I'm also having thoughts about people in my community who I know work for other people and are possibly, now that you're pointing out this sort of chakra energy of business, I can see how it would also apply to people who are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, even when they work for someone else. Would you be doing, or can you do, or have you done a chakra business assessment for someone who's not an entrepreneur?
Absolutely, because it works. Because first of all, what I like to do, let's say somebody works in a company. I like to do their chakra assessment and compare it to the chakras of the business, even to see how they're matching up or not, or if they should even be there or not, or how they can use their gifts within that business and how that can compel the business onto greater heights. So you can assess chakras no matter what you're doing and what type of role you play as a business person.
Can we share some of the methodology or some of the tools that you use or some of the steps that you would take or questions that you ask for people to start sort of getting a sense of if they're going to do a little self-examination right now? Of course, they're not the experts, but again, it's something to say, hey, I'm aware of this. I'm conscious of this. What would be some of the signs or questions someone might see or ask themselves to start to just check in and see how they feel about it?
I can absolutely share. And I do want to say people are an expert at themselves, so they don't have to know everything about chakras to analyze their chakras or their business chakras or the business they work for chakras either. So I start with an odd number. I always start with the chakra that's underneath the feet. I call it the 10th chakra. You can kind of feel it if you go into your feet and go under. Well, your business, a business has feet too. That would relate to the history of the business, the founder of the business. What was the basis for the business? What was the first product? Why did it start? What made that business unique? What are the roots of the business? So you always want to see where something started, because then you can figure out if it's still going in that same direction or maybe it needs to shift. I move people into the first chakra of the business. That's about physicality. That's going to be an assessment of how's the money flowing? Is there a big enough profit margin? Is the money stuck anywhere? Are we overpricing, underpricing? Is the money being made in an ethical manner? So that's really going to be all about money and the basic resourcing, including what's the building like? What are the offices like? Anything that has to do with core resources, you now assess and you get a sense of what's working and what's not. And then you keep climbing the ladder. You're going to go into what's called the second chakra, which is feelings and emotions. How do you feel being in that business? How do you feel about your business? What are the basic emotive strains in the business? Or like at Disney, are they always cheery? They're not really cheery right now, but there you are. Then we assess structure. Technically, that's third chakra. What's the hierarchy? What's the flow? What's, kind of who sits where and who runs what power? Go into relationship, which can be HR-ish type of concerns, but you're really kind of going a little bit more intuitive there. You're digging deeper and really looking at how's the relationship flow? Can people talk to each other? Are they able to relate to each other? Are they scared when they come to work, etc.? Then we would look at communications, and that can be very basic. Marketing communications, marketing assessment, branding, strategy, what's being said about the business, what's being shared, are things the way they need to be or not? Kind of see how we go up this chakra ladder. We're moving to sixth chakra, which is visual. How do everything look? How do people dress? What's your branding look like? Is that consistent with your history, with your basic ethics that are sort of in the root? Then we start lifting into areas that are a little bit more uncanny, because we're going to talk now about spirituality. What's the spirit of the business? If you could describe the overarching purpose, spiritual purpose of the business and how well you fit in it, that's sort of the loftier kind of ideas. That's your spiritual mission. And I actually find business people love to talk about that. It's like they kind of get bored just with structure. They want to lift their minds to the clouds. The next few chakras aren't as known for people as the 10th probably wasn't either, but we're in the 8th chakra, which is the shamanic. This is where a business can really kind of go downhill a little bit, because any business needs what I would call a shaman. You need the people or the person who provides the difference. They're the ones who say dark when everybody says light. They're the ones who say, hey, let's not go to the right, let's go to the left. So is there space and room for the mystical, for the uncanny, for the unusual, for the other points of view? Now we're lifting into what I call the 9th chakra. That's above the head. That's about higher power. When people come to work, or when the business is really functional, are there higher principles being served that promote idealism, that promote harmony? Certainly you can check corporate social responsibility, but you're really kind of asking, how do I fit as a business? How does the business fit into the globe, into the community? And it can be, again, as practical as, is there a volunteer program? Or are we taking care of the stakeholders in the communities where we have factories, or whatever it is that the business is all about? And after that, we've done 10th. That's the historical. We move to 11th, which is wondrous, because it's about commanding. It's about how is power used. It's a little more difficult to get to this, because you can certainly assess who are the power mongers, but also you have to ask who is wielding supernatural power. Is there anybody in the company, or I, the person in the company, that's kind of making things happen really behind the scenes, not just so with wishes, with prayers, with petitions, with the use of invisible forces. I work with the 12 chakra system. The 12th is very unique. And this is the fun place where you sit and go, oh, what's really unique about this business? And is there anything we haven't opened or activated or awakened? That can be in terms of product. That can be in terms of way that we want to interact. That can be in terms of wellness programs. If you're a single business owner, it can be is there a new service that's really wild and is really me that I need to break out right now? So that's our place for getting really creative and very individualistic too.
Very comprehensive. A lot of questions people will not have answers for.
That's right. You can use your intuition and you can not fill in all the blanks as well. But getting a sense of maybe the 4 or 5 of those areas that pull you, that seem to be areas of strength or concern, get you going in analyzing where you are, analyzing your business, analyzing if you want to work for the business, etc.
So I'm thinking of applications. Obviously, if you're a business owner, that this is a no-brainer because it is about the business you're putting out into the world and whether or not you're in alignment with it. If you're not a business owner and you work for someone else, although I would have to say I do believe that if people were to actually connect with themselves on a deeper level, they all would have intuition about whether they should or shouldn't be where they are. Like if this is good for me or if this is out of integrity. But let's say it's the person who in their mind, they think maybe it's out of integrity for me to work for this person or be in this company. I can feel it doesn't serve me, but I'm unwilling to change it right now. So would a chakra assessment for the business be something where they could unblock something that would make it easier for them to stay and feel better about themselves?
Absolutely. They can unblock, like let's take a look at what might be bothering them the most. Maybe they don't like their boss. Maybe they think their boss is toxic. Well, there's 2 people in the relationship. The boss certainly might be toxic. That issue could certainly relate to the 4th or the heart chakra. So now you can do some deeper work in yourself. Like, where's my judgment? Where's this coming from? In what way am I sending out subtle or regular communications, that could be making me the one that they go after? And, who's that boss like from my childhood? You can do the deeper work and then decide, what, I'm going to shift myself. And whether or not I end up getting along with the boss, I have upgraded who I am. So you can always work on yourself. And JJ, I think you can also go in and say, look, my job is to count widgets. This is just not my strength. That's a 3rd chakra way of being. It's very detailed. It's very project. You're getting paid for it. You have to do it. But maybe, like I even have a client right now who's saying, I'm a shaman. Like he knows he's a shaman and he's a banker. He does the widget thing and it's boring for him, but he's going to do his best job. And he's also saying, okay, in what way can I help the people around me? Can I help my staff? Can I help them develop? Can I help them trust their gut sense or their intuition more? So he's using his strength because he can't afford to be out of a job in the moment to also change the work environment for the better.
Yeah, I'm feeling into that. I have, again, some of my mastermind members have a full-time job, but are developing a side business. And the side business is really honoring that creative part of themselves and how they want to serve and have fun and venture into places that they're not giving themselves permission to dive into. It's like putting your toe in the water to make sure the water's, not too cold and that you can handle it, and then going in very slowly. And whether you may or may not ever jump in completely, you can enjoy it for what it's worth and for what it is and how it does serve and balance possibly what you're doing in the world. And, let's talk about balance for a second, because I believe that when people are out of balance and out of integrity, that's when energetically we attract cancers and stomach issues and all kinds of things that we manifest to show us where we're toxic, where we're out of alignment. And I know before we started recording today, one of the things I love to share, especially on the Health and Wealth podcast, as well as everywhere, obviously, is sort of your story of a point where you might have been out of integrity or not listening to your intuition or doing something because you thought you had to, and then like the physical result of that. And I know we talked about the arrhythmia. Can you tell us that story?
I can. Starting at about age, 36, 37, something of that nature, I started to get arrhythmia. And it was a fast arrhythmia. It was really frightening. It was scary. I couldn't breathe very well. And if any of you have ever had that kind of inconsistent heartbeat, you think you're going to die the first few times you get it. So I kept going into ER and they would say, you've got atrial fibrillation and And so, quit caffeine and quit this and quit that. And I pretty much quit everything except vegetables and protein. I made my diet really healthy, which was fantastic. And I still got the arrhythmia between 10 p.m. at midnight almost every night. I had a lot of stress going on in my life. I was in the relationship that wasn't healthy for me. So I cleaned that up. I changed myself, eventually got out of it. I mean, I really listened to the message of the heart, if you would, literally the heartbeat, to say, I'm just willing to become as healthy as I can be. I started sharing more of my feelings because a lot of heart issues actually relate to repressed emotions that you're not sharing. And for me, it was anger. I mean, the root word for angina is anger. So am I being clear? Am I being kind and clear in my boundary setting at the same time? So I went on like this for 2 to 3 years. And I am very grateful for the condition of the arrhythmia, but it wasn't gone between 10 p.m. and midnight. So one night, I woke up, there it is beating away. And I just said, you know what? I'm just going to call for help. I called my mother. And I have to precede what I'm going to say by sharing that I discovered over those few years of cleaning myself up that I'm allergic to alcohol. If I drink alcohol or too many sugars, I get arrhythmia. Hello. But I wasn't drinking alcohol between 10 p.m. and midnight. I called my mother and I discovered she was drinking alcohol. Like every night she drank alcohol between 10 p.m. and midnight, my time. I also discovered several other of my relatives were doing the same thing in their own time zones. And it was always like, if you translate it, between 10 p.m. and midnight, my time zone. And I'm like, look, first I got mad. I was like, I'm not responsible for them drinking. How come I'm the one reacting to their alcohol? So I, sat down, I ruminated, and I thought, Cyndi, what is this telling you? But you're just sort of a huge, flaming, energetic codependent. You're so codependent, you are actually taking in the subtle energy, the invisible energy of their alcohol to what? Help them not be alcoholics, to get them to stop drinking, which I've done lots of Al-Anon. I did Al-Anon before then, and it doesn't work. You cannot be in the way of somebody's addiction. You can care, you can change yourself, you can't change them, etc. Serenity prayer. And that cleaned up my invisible boundaries. At that point, I was so convinced of what I already knew, but I was ignoring, which is that your subtle boundaries count just as much, if not more, than your everyday psychological and physical boundaries. And I dealt with the energetics of it. I said, you know what? I love these people, but I can't do this for them because I'm hurting myself. I can send love, but I can't do this for them. And so honestly, I stopped doing it for them. And as soon as I did that, you know what? The arrhythmia went away. I don't know if they all quit drinking or didn't quit drinking. Well, I think they didn't quit drinking, but that wasn't my business. My business was my business. So it was a gift. I don't even like using the word gift, but it is a gift because I'm beholden to that condition for what it taught me and what I learned through it.
So how were you helping them? Was it by you being concerned about them, by you putting an energetic connection somehow and being responsible for their choices?
Yes. What I was literally doing in my world of energy healing, there's something called a cord. It's a garden hose. It's an electrical wire. They're agreements that you make subconsciously. Really, you could say soul to soul with another being. It could be a human being, a not, living being. And these are the kind of cords that we unconsciously create all the time, even when we're in the womb. And they seem to be beneficial for us or for the other, but they never really are. So my original energetic agreement was to my mother, which was, I will give you my life energy, Mom, and I will take on your issues. I will take on your emotions. I will take on your problems. But I was doing that with other members of the family who were alcoholics or who were heavy drinkers. So I was giving them my life energy, out of love, right? But taking on their problem, taking on the energetics of the alcohol, sort of as a way of trying to cure them, which is a no-no. You can't do for others what they need to do for themselves. So you could say I was actually really selfish. It's very egotistical underneath it all to say, well, if I give myself away, if I work on the issues for them, then they're going to be better. I mean, who am I to decide that? I do believe we can help other people. We can help them. We can love them. We can be with them, but we can't do for them.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that I learned at Al-Anon was that I got very quickly. I also agree that there's a certain frequency you can be there and be in, and it doesn't work. But that the person who's there at Al-Anon is saying, oh, poor me, I have somebody who's doing these things and I can't, they can't change, or I'm trying to help them. And of course, Al-Anon's job is to make you realize that you also are an addict, and your addiction is control, and that you're using them as your excuse not to do what's right for you. It's about putting all of your love and attention onto somebody else as if, and it's really a way to get around not dealing with your own stuff. It's an addiction of denial. And so we've done cord cutting on the show once in the very beginning with Shireen Hunt, who was actually someone who married my ex-husband and I in Hawaii. And then we've done cord cutting at one of my events, either Releasing What Weighs You Down, maybe. So the audience is familiar with cords a little bit, but let's take it a little further. Let's talk about that, the cord and the cord cutting, or how you handled recognizing that, and then anything that you did. Did you do it yourself because you can people do it by themselves, or do you do it for others?
And it's a yes all the way to all those questions. In that case, I did work on the cord myself. So sometimes people ask, how do you know if you have a cord? If you have a really stuck aspect of your life, whether that be physical, a part of your body that's always in pain, never gets well, constantly gets afflicted, you're constantly infected with something, you have a psychological or part of psychological and emotional or a mental issue you can't get rid of, or if you hear voices in your head, or you have an entity that isn't biochemical, it's something other than you probably have a cord. You have this unhealthy connection. Those can get established in a different life. I believe we have past lives. They can certainly, and often do, become established when we're in the womb, but we can acquire them at any time. So once we recognize that this is happening, to me, the next step is to say, what's my part? Now, I established very subconsciously this type of unhealthy bond with my mother when I was like a teeny tiny baby in the womb. Maybe my soul was part of that. That could be just purely on the biological level. I wanted to survive. She wanted an abortion. She didn't want to carry me to term. There's no shame in owning your part, because everything we do is at least a subconscious or unconscious attempt to meet a deeper need. We're trying to do something loving. We just don't know how. And we have the skills that we have, or we're the age that we were, or the family system is such that this is the way we do it. So we go ahead and do it that way. So once you can do a little bit of work, and you can work with another person also to help you figure out what's the underneath need for me that's getting met. I don't actually cut cords. I disintegrate them, mainly because I want to send healing to the other parties involved and receive it for myself. So I use what I call scalar waves. It's a science concept that says there's this sort of absolute light that's available. You can call it grace. You can call it Reiki energy. You can call it love. As long as it's something that you trust and it comes from a source that you believe in, you ask for the energies of love to disintegrate the cord and send healing to all parties concerned. Sometimes if you just cut it and it's like a live wire, it may just go, woo, kind of like blow around and then connect to somebody else who can meet that old need, but again, not in a new way.
Okay. Well, it's a great thing to know that you can assist somebody with that if they need help as well. And I'm sure some people probably really relate to that idea of now being aware of some of that they have going on for them. And I want to now connect this, because I think it's a good segue between the cord and some of these chakra energy balancing, and again, I'm going to say being in integrity and in balance, you have a new book that's out called Energy Healing for Trauma. Let's pivot a little bit into, because I feel like this is a situation where some of these things that we're doing in life are compensations for not healing the energies of our trauma. And until we get to that root of what that's about, and again, transform, shift, transmute that energy, then we're stuck in a pattern. So tell us a little bit about energy healing for trauma.
Yeah, well, I think you've just summarized it. To be honest, most of what we do that's unhealthy is because of trauma. To me, trauma is stress that doesn't go away. It gets locked in the system, in what's called the subtle system, as well as the physical system. And there we are, stuck at the age, or stuck in the situation, and or in the feelings of what happened to us. And I'm very deliberately, JJ, talking about trauma as something that happens to us, because, it's not to set us up to remain victimized or to think of ourselves as a victim. Is to recognize that most of what impacts us, especially when we're younger, does happen to us. There's a stage, though, where that's locked into our system, into our body, into our behavior, our way of thinking. And we actually then can start inflicting harm on ourselves or on others. And some mainly prefer to injure themselves, maybe with food issues or addictions, or, kind of negative self-talk, or never feeling their feelings and becoming codependent to go fix the other people. Some kind of don't like that energy, the traumatized energy inside of them. And they're like, whoa, I want to be more powerful than how I was when I got hurt. So I'm just going to go act this out on other people. So the secondary effect is how we treat ourselves or others. The primary stressors are the trauma that happens to us that gets stuck. And it's we've all been traumatized. I remember years and years ago, John Bradshaw, great writer, family systems therapy, just suggested, hey, 97% of all family systems are dysfunctional. I don't even know why we say there's 3% that aren't. I mean, most parents, I'm a parent, I certainly work on and do my best. And I know that I have created challenges for my kids. I think the difference between me and like my parents is I was willing to keep working on myself. I was willing to talk to my kids about it. I took them into therapy. I took myself into therapy, and I'm willing to apologize and change too.
Well, you have a consciousness about that your parents didn't have. Obviously, from the get-go, you understood that your level of seeing, your level of vibrating and interpreting was at a whole different level. I mean, even just your origin story is that you started seeing, different colors and around people, and you saw chakras, and you heard conversations and voices. So just right out of the gate, here's the difference between your level of awareness and theirs. And when you are at that level of awareness, you're also aware that others aren't necessarily where you are either, which makes it easier to be, or can be easier to be compassionate, to be understanding, to see a different point of view, because you have perspective, which many people don't have because they're just reacting negatively to the patterns that happen to them. So in terms of the energy healing for trauma, tell us a little bit about, obviously this is for everybody.
Everybody. And I really like this book. It's sort of a summary of what I've been helping clients with for almost 30 years. Because in the end, what I'm helping people do is release from the causal point of trauma and open up who they really are. A big chunk of the book is actually about the biology of stress and trauma, because we have bodies. I may be an intuitive person, an intuitive healer. I also have a body. You have a body. We all have bodies. So what's happening, not just, in the invisible realms, which I talked about, or psychologically, but what occurs in the physical body? What happens with the hormones? What happens in the bone marrow? What happens with the vagus nerve? And there's so much great research right now on trauma effects and trauma release from a somatic or a body point of view. I've got a lot of that in there, but I add the storyline of the invisible, because that's where often people get stuck, is their helpers, their practitioners, their doctors, their psychiatrists don't understand that maybe you can't recover fully because you brought somebody else's energy in to you when they were traumatizing you. You might actually have their anger or their shame or the microbe that was impacting them. Maybe your practitioner doesn't understand that you brought some traumatized conditions in from a past life, or that you took on that from somebody else to help them, and now you're kind of trying to work through what's not yours, or that there's forces that left energies that, you know, came from the environment or the culture that are impacting you. I think it's like a handbook of what is trauma from a physical and subtle point of view, with exercises that help you actually work from both perspectives.
Perfect. My people like exercises. They like things tangible they can actually do. So energy healing for trauma. And where can they buy that? Amazon and Barnes and Noble?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Yep, it's out there. Yep,
okay.
Easy click on Amazon.
Excellent. And I would be amiss, and I'm sure people are waiting for me to ask you this. Do you know your astrological birth chart?
I do. Do we get to talk about that?
I'm just very curious on your sun, your moon, your ascendant, and your true node.
Okay. I am a Taurus in the sun, and people don't ever believe that, but I'm a Taurus, and I am very in my house and very stubborn. I'm Norwegian. I'm a Taurus. My rising sign is Scorpio. My moon is in Virgo, and I don't know the rest.
Well, I just asked for a true node or north node. That's your soul.
Yeah, I can't remember.
No worries. No worries. I'm actually quite shocked with the Taurus Virgo.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, the Scorpio rising makes complete sense. And I mean, even the sun in Taurus, it's the sun in Taurus, moon in Virgo combo, because what I've experienced, and again, I'm shooting from a very small section of the population of people. I find that a lot of Virgo moons are some of the hardest people to change their behavior, that they have to really manifest something that actually forces them to change, regardless of the conscious awareness. And so to be in the work that you're doing and so open to it, and again, be a Taurus, right? Like it's like there has to be, I wonder if your true note is air. I feel like there has to be some air in you somewhere.
I would guess that because I work with subtle elements. Like everybody tells you to ground in the earth element. I can't stand that. I tell people choose between fire, water, earth, air, light, sound, metal, whatever it is. And I ground, supposedly, that's the way I think of it, in air. I love air. Everything I do is about air.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. So the other planets I didn't ask you about were Mercury, Venus, and Mars, which you could have 3 planets in air there. Mercury's about communication. So if you were air,
I have air there. I do have air there. I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And right, there you go. Okay. So there we have it. So I want everyone to go to cindydale.com as well. CYNDI, Cyndi Dale, DALE.com. And it will be also, the link will be in the show notes, but get energy healing for trauma on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. And then of course, if you're interested in, do we have any kind of something to offer that could give them a little more information, or see if it's something that's right for them, if they're interested in the chakra assessment for their business, or a chakra business plan assessment, or if someone's just wants a chakra assessment for their career?
Yeah, they can certainly write in from my website. I have a performance coaching, a 2-hour assessment that I do chakra assessments on. That's described on my website. And I can always send people a big handout about it because I love doing the chakra business assessments. I mean, to me, that's like for you doing the astrological. It's like, ooh, what are we going to find here? And it's very exciting.
Excellent. Well, I think it sounds fascinating, and I can't wait to go back and look at all the different questions that you ask, and then ask them of myself, even though I'm feeling pretty aligned and good, better than I've ever have. So, I mean, I've already answered that question, but moving forward, and all the things that I want to be doing and that I'm reaching for, it would be an interesting exercise to have that and to see if it's in alignment and in terms of timing and what would need to be where in order for XYZ to, be ready to launch launch, so to speak. So I think it's fascinating. And so has been this conversation. So I appreciate your willingness to be vulnerable and share the things that have worked for you and when they didn't. And of course, your astrology, because I'm always very curious about that. And to give people some hope and some tools, not only in the questions and the self-evaluation of the chakra stuff, but also in the book, your new book, Energy Healing for Trauma. So again, check Cyndi out, CyndiDale.com, CYNDIDALE.com, and it's Energy Healing for Trauma. Cyndi, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's my joy. I think your business is very aligned, by the way, JJ.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's my vote.